into game number 4. We do have spawning in on the right side of the screen, Mista playing as the Mongols in red, and LucifroN is going to be in command of the French Empire playing as the blue on the left side.
Oh yes, let's see how this one's going to play out. So first thing to check is how did the spawns go, because it's a big detail for Mongols, and it looks like the Mongols did get the tight golden wood, but a very far forward Uvu coming out, which will allow him to go maybe into an early racks and try for some outpost shenanigans. Outpost shenanigans that could yield some advantages, but remember a detail that I was highlighting in the pregame is one important aspect for the French is if they get back wood spawns, they can play a very defensive style and TC boom up. If we take a look quickly at LucifroN's base, we can see he actually got double wood on the backside, has those natural defenses that he can palisade around the back of, and if he does that, it's going to be very difficult for Mista to go for an outpost rush. Now, we have highlighted that Mista isn't the type of person that usually goes for this play, but if you check out on that Uvu right now, we can find out if he's a greedy boy or a filthy little tower boy, because Mista is building something up right now. And it is going to be the outposts. Now, racks make a lot of sense when you're playing against the French anyway. You definitely benefit from having those units, considering you just know French Knights are coming out. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter where you're from. If you think for a second your opponent is not going to be pushing French Knights, you're making a dreadful mistake. It's just the premium unit. In fact, I would say that French Knights have to be #1 in Feudal Age. There's not another unit that has that degree of flexibility. Maneuvers well, very tanky, can trade pretty damn well itself, and also has the ability to regenerate when you go into Chivalry. So, like, all the boxes are being ticked right now. Of course, it won't fare well up against the Spears, and if Mista is able to find the right target for his aggression, he could shut down the Knights before they get produced. And keep in mind that he can actually do that with 2 outposts. One outpost on the east side of the northern tree line in LucifroN, and then another one wrapping around on the back of the wood and the gold. And he is on the move to exactly there.
Yeah, it looks like he's only operating with 2 spears right now, so it's not a hard commit to this tower rushing play. He's moving through the stealth forest over here, but he has not yet been scouted by LucifroN. But when you're in LucifroN's position, you gotta scout for that Ovu straight away. You need to check whether there's a tower rush coming at you. And one thing that Salam is trying to show us, I believe, is that Mista is kind of lacking vision right now, so he doesn't have a great insight to where exactly he should be placing his towers at.
He's gonna get that info now as the Spears reach in. Now, one thing to consider is LucifroN is the type of player that will go for multi-TCs. So if you drop an outpost on this gold and this stone, you block out that as an option available to him. And this is what I mean by, like, 2 outposts can actually just decrease LucifroN's ability to play the game. You can take out the TC boom, and you can take out both gold sources with just 2 outposts.
Yeah, but the thing that Salami is pointing out to us is that there is no villager being pulled just yet.
Yeah.
It's only spearmen.
And I'm wondering what the intent is for Mista. Like, you know...
He seems like he's just scouting. Oh, he's looking for a gold mine because there's a gold mine at the back. Yeah. I think he's just looking for a gold mine that he wants to tower rush and he simply can't find it. Maybe he's like...
Here's another thought though, Lidakor. Like, he only has the Khan. He didn't build a second scout.
Yeah.
Are these spearmen operating as like a pseudo scout? You get passive stone anyway. It isn't merely 80 resource each, but it's a unit that can be used in a different way later. And it also means that instead of building a scout and sacrificing villager production, you just have extra villager.
This is a bait. I don't think this was ever intended to be a tower rush. Like, for some time I thought that he's just looking for a gold mine, checking if it's a back gold, because if it's a back gold, he might be hesitant to tower rush this, and he scouted with the spears trying to find it, and then decide whether he goes for a tower rush. But the more I'm looking at this, the more I'm feeling that this is just a bait, because we talked about this one beforehand. How do you respond to a Mongol tower rush as the French? You go for scouts. And I think Mista might be baiting his opponent into that. Because the thing is that LucifroN cannot see the towers right now, but when you see 4 spearmen from the Mongols, the fact that you cannot see the tower doesn't mean that there is no tower coming up. So we'll see. I'm actually curious to see if LucifroN responds to this preemptively.
I don't think it's going to be about the scouts, though. Like, there's a cool element to this. Like, you're right, it's a bait, but in a different way. Look what he's already forced. An archery range, and Mista's already prepped the stables. On top of this, think about the idle time. He kept rushing left and right on the gold vein. It doesn't seem like much, but over time, there's a lot of idle time adding up on your villagers on that gold line. And that did slow him down the accruement. And now, afterwards, these spearmen could still potentially wrap around and hop onto the stone outcropping if LucifroN doesn't now invest enough into the initial archers.
What's puzzling me a little bit is that it's not uncommon for the French to go for archers over here. So I'm not exactly sure if, forcing an archer range is something that I would classify as an accomplishment. Because the moment you add spearmen, you will see an archer range being added. And like, the French, 99% of the time, they will play with knights and archers. The only thing that you could possibly accomplish here is that you possibly delay a second town center, because if Mista wants to play a very passive and slow game here, instead of putting up much of an aggression, as you pointed out, he could expect the second town center from LucifroN, something that he's already mining stone for. So if he was expecting a second town center and a passive play from LucifroN, he at least prompted the addition of an archer range, so it's going to delay that second town center being added. That could be the theory behind this, but it's a bit of a puzzling approach so far by Mista.
Well, the interesting dynamics at play here for Mista is if he chooses to start hard committing to Horseman, you have to keep in mind that LucifroN's economy for the first few minutes of that second town center is going to be skewed. He won't have the ability to produce out of both TCs and produce knights as well. And that's where Mista could potentially get a one-up by spamming Horseman. While knights in a one-on-one with a Horseman will always win out, when you start to mass them to ridiculous degrees, when you actually reach a stage where it's, say, 3 Horsemen stabbing 1 knight, they can't trade well anymore. And that could actually be a way which yields Mista an advantage. Especially if he backs it up with this. It's going to be outpost, and it looks like he's setting up for a potential boar play, because you can see where that's located. Right next to a relic, right next to a boar, and right next to a sacred site.
This feels like the love child of the Rus Archer build and the daily Horseman Spearman approach, I'm not gonna lie. I agree with you. This is a great idea. We have seen this over and over again in French versus Delhi matchups, that Spearman Horseman full melee comp will beat Knights and Archers. And the Mongols can easily spam those units out, but you need a consistent and reliable food eco to be able to accomplish that, and a boar is going to give you that. Now this boar will be scouted by LucifroN. He spotted the Gur as well, not just the tower, so he's aware of that boar, but how are you going to stop this one? Your eco and your army is not set up for this. You're set up for 2 TCs, not a board play.
And the whole point of this board play is it enables you to go for Horseman Spam if you want to. That whole Delhi idea, like spam unless crap. It also gives you the ability to quickly reach castle. And right now, because there's an outpost here and you have this dynamic force of Horsemen, LucifroN can't go for this. Do you want to know why else he can't go for a Lidakor? What did LucifroN go on to for 300 off? 301 to be specific of. He went for the stone. He already revealed his hand. He blinked first, and he revealed that he is a greedy little boy. And that is why Mista will get away with his own form of greed.
And that form of greed can come in multiple different directions, if you think about that, because Mista, as you said, he can spam Horseman. But if you take a look at his resources, right now it feels an even more greedy approach. We might see a fast castle here from Mista, and we know that the Mongols love to play it. That's their #1 go-to build nowadays. Tower rush into this fast castle monastery to pick up the relics, and then second town center style approach. And Mista, he's very likely to be doing that. Second town center just now coming out for LucifroN. This is looking pretty decent so far for Mista, and as long as that boar is under his control, he's gonna be more than happy with the state of the game. Also drops 2 towers preemptively with arrow slit in placement, so he is very much respectful towards LucifroN's ability to deny that boar or just dive in with knights.
Oh my god, he's going both boar. He's actually going both boar.
No,
It's a double boar player,
oh my
Mista.
god, Mista!
And the remarkable part is that they're so close together that he can draw all attention here and guard this area. Mista is not only going to get the resource together for a quick castle age, once he gets there, he's going to be booming in the Lancer department.
And the thing is, as you pointed out, you have stealth forests all across the map. This is something that you can pull off much easier on a map like Highview because your villagers are concealed. Just give me one reason why LucifroN would ever check out that area. He would never do that. It's a waste of your time to move down south with your knights that direction. He will never find it, or at least he won't find it for the next few minutes at least. And that is exactly what Mista is gambling on. LucifroN has no idea about this, and the boar, one of the best sources of food, not only is going to give a tremendous amount of food income here for Mista, it also ensures it doesn't have to switch into pastures for a long time in a game where LucifroN is already forced to add farms. This is why Mista is one of the most spectacular players to watch in competitive Age of Empires, because there is very few players that would have pulled off such a thing.
Think about the optimization here. He's not spending 150 wood per pasture. On top of that, he's getting better gathering rates, 0.75 for a sheep compared to 0.9 for a boar. I will say that I think LucifroN's way too defensive on this, though. Like, this is actually being enabled by his unwillingness to fight. He has 4 knights there. That boar is stockpiled with more than 5 villagers. You should be diving in and sniping eco right now. But LucifroN seems to think that he's ahead. This is a high-level game, Lucy. You might be able to hop on one of the Smurfs, you'll go up against your 500 rank Elo Andy, and he probably is going to let you get away with this and not be doing the optimized eco. But this is Mista. This is a top 10 player, top 20 player at least, bare minimum, in the game. He's going to be getting his own reap rewards, which you're about to learn very soon as the tech up is underway.
That is a great build by Mista, and part of this could be scouting, and I'm not referring to scouting in this game. Scouting before the set, looking at the tendencies of your opponent, because you mentioned at the beginning of the game that LucifroN, he likes to go for that second TC approach. If Mista is aware of this, he could start this game from minute number 1, planning for his opponent to play a little bit more passive and a little bit more eco-focused, and he would be completely aware of the fact that LucifroN won't be breaking out of his base, so he can go for these pocket ecos without being in much of a danger.
Lida, I think he's optimizing for spear man-at-arms dive. So Mista's going to actually have all the food required for that, and it allows him to optimize gold to pick up relics. This is once again another transition prepped, and that will lead into the secondary TC later, while applying pressure to LucifroN's base, and LucifroN just got the info. Look at his army, 7 knights, 14 archers. You're not punishing anyone with that. Not with what's coming next.
And those towers with the YAM network set up on the front line, those will also buff your army even further. Another outpost now coming in with Castle Age in for Mista. He can start working his way towards the Spring Golden placements. He might need to bail on this board, but he's gonna be more than happy bailing on a board that only has 600 food left on it. Especially because LucifroN is completely unaware of the fact that there's a second board down south. And Mista, he's in Castle. Yeah, he's never gonna find it.
Exactly. And you see LucifroN is trying to save up now, but off the back of this, Mista's choice in the end was to go for the Holy Trinity. Archer range, stable, and racks, and it means he's going to have a very stable fighting force here at the beginning of Castle Age. Crossbows to counter out the knights, spearmen to also run them through, and on top of that, he can switch up into man-at-arms to chase on down the archers at all times, but that duty is going to lie upon the lancers that will always get away with it because the knights will not be able to block them out. Speaking of lancers, the knights are out of position.
Yeah,
one lancer could do a lot of damage here, but he doesn't want to commit.
Yeah, it looks like LucifroN is a little puzzled over here. You see, he's moving north with the knights. You get the impression that he's just sitting there saying, okay, what do I do now? Because you would try to just launch a counterattack and raid, but that's very difficult to do against a compact Mongol base, especially when Mista already has spearmen, some crossbows back at home as well. And right now, LucifroN is sort of stuck in his base for the time being, which is buying precious time for Mista to build up his Castle Age unit mass.
And that's the thing to highlight here. You mentioned compact base. The reason Mista does this play, I don't think, like, he probably had it cataloged somewhere in his big fat brain. But he didn't come in this game and say, I'm going to do that by default. Yeah,
everyone say goodbye to that Gur.
plenty of anger towards that Gur as is brought down. But, like, for real, like, think about this. He could not do this build if his gold is away from his TC.
Oh, he's moving us south.
Knights. Wait, but, like, how much is left of the ball? And there's 2 outposts here.
Nothing. So you might be asking yourself the question, how did he know?
Whoops.
He didn't know. The idea here for LucifroN is that he saw the first board being abandoned and he said, okay, maybe he's moving to the second one. He didn't move here because he assumed that this guy was there for a long time. He moved in because he saw Mista move away from the first board. But as you said, it's 300 food left on that board, and you could just run away, hide in the stealth forest, while you're also sending in your own lancers to hit the eco of LucifroN.
He's a greedy boy. Looks like he's going to lose
maybe too greedy.
Going down, but now the trade, it's actually a good trade because there's not enough room to garrison inside this TC. He's going to have to run away. A few lances in the mix. A lot of idle economy for LucifroN. And an awkward time because, look, LucifroN is in the middle of a tech up. This could not have been timed more perfectly for Mista. I wonder if he even intended this at specific timing.
Yeah, this timing is perfect over here. He also saw the knights moving to the south, so he's aware of the fact that those are not back home to deal with that. And think about it this way, LucifroN's army was only archers and knights. If the knights are on the south, LucifroN has nothing in his base to defend against lancers with, and that's what Mista exploited over here. Now the spearmen are flooding in. Castle Age is in for LucifroN. He went up with the Royal Institute, but it's going to take so much time for him to get those key upgrades, and Mista just won't let him get those. He's diving deep under the town center with the spears and the lancers.
he's just going to commit, trying to block out the eco. And what he's doing by doing this is making sure that this TC expansion isn't really yielding any true worth right now. Small ramp play by LucifroN in the end isn't going to achieve too much more. But Knight's always stuck running away as long as the spears are pursuing behind them. Looks like that boar is still potentially available. Fight now clashing over here. The Spearman getting ranged, blocked off by his own archers here as he tries to back away. Heavy damage into the Knights, and this trade is decent for TheMista because the crossbows are now arriving. Crossbows that can quickly clean up whatever remains here. And LucifroN now in need of a transition. Arbiter would be phenomenal, but he's delayed in his switchover.
He's heavily delayed in the switchover, although, truth be told, now Mista is losing some of his forces over here, and if LucifroN is able to stabilize, he still has a respectable villager lead of 20, and it's not like Mista has gotten 5 relics for himself either, so hold on to this one. It's not over just yet, because LucifroN, if he stabilizes over here, and I think he's got a legitimate chance to stabilize, he still has the eco lead, and he's got the Royal Institute. He just needs a couple of moments to grab Royal Bloodlines, and suddenly, the tides could easily turn. Candled Saddles now coming in for his Knights. He's down to 13 army, but Mista is also down to 14 himself.
Mista, for the moment, he's just going to keep piling on the pressure, because remember, he's gathering up the relics off the back of this. So while the eco lead is still big for LucifroN, the compact eco makes it more difficult for Lucy to raid in, while Mista can always just strike in. And that's one of the beautiful things you have to keep in mind. Like, when you tend to eco boom like this, you move out your safe resources quicker. Mista, funnily enough, started this game off by going for dangerous resources and being able to fall back to safety afterwards. And you can see the pressure that's now coming in, because this gold line is as safe as it gets for LucifroN. If you check that vein, it doesn't look very healthy. It hasn't got much left. After that, you have to play out into more dangerous territory.
That's exactly it. LucifroN needs a couple of outposts for vision potentially, or at least some walls, but he needs to make sure that he cannot get raided by Mista non-stop, because that has been a returning issue. And as you pointed out, while Mista is raiding and forcing the engagements inside the base of LucifroN, Mista can set up pocket ecos on the hunts, further delaying a transition to the pastures, and also pick up relics. And now he's got 4 relics on the way back home. LucifroN taps out, and with that, Mista just moves on.
Mista, he repeats the strategy from before, once again diving LucifroN's base to get a 1-up elsewhere. What a remarkable way for Mista to close out this series. Using a trick from the book he's presented so far, but a whole new trick in the double ball play on high view.
Such a clever approach over here from Mista, and as you said, he may have sensed that LucifroN wants to play a little bit more eco-focused, a little bit more focused on the 2 town center build, and he has exploited that so well. He was aware of the fact that LucifroN won't be putting up that much aggression to establish map control. He was aware of the fact that the players, with those very pricey and expensive knights, they're hesitant to dive deep into the stealth forest because it's too risky. Those are precious units, you don't want to lose them. LucifroN avoided diving deep into the stealth forest, but that also concealed all the villagers that Mista had on the board, and ultimately, that yields the Costlage power spike for Mista, and starts a snowball that LucifroN wasn't able to stop. TheMista, with a 3-1 win, moves on to the final day and the deciders of the June monthly event of Red Bull Wololo Legacy, Road to Red Bull Wololo Legacy rather, for a chance to get a ticket to Heidelberg.